different. Oh, okay, we will get started. Hello and welcome to our virtual author visit today or tonight at Westbury Memorial Public Library. I'm Michelle Marcus, reference librarian, and your host today. Just to let you know, I will start by having all attendees on mute. Anyone who's new might not know this, but we just do that to while I do the interview. So to keep, have a quiet, and then when it's question and answer time, you could use the raise hand emoji in the bottom, or you could put your question in the chat, and then I could pick you, and then you could put yourself off in mute at that time. So I'm excited to speak to author Alyson Richman. I want to share a little more about her first before we get started. She is the USA Today best-selling and #1 international best-selling author of several historical novels, including The Velvet Hours, The Garden of Letters, and The Lost Wife, which is currently in development for a major motion picture. Very interesting. Alyson graduated from Wesley College with a degree in art history and Japanese studies. She herself is an accomplished painter, and her novels combine her deep love of art, historical research, and travel. Alyson's novels have been published in 25 languages and have reached a bestseller list in both the US and abroad. She lives on Long Island and with her husband and 2 children, where she's currently at work at her next novel. Hello, Alyson. How are you today?
I am very good. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome, and thank you for agreeing to do this virtual author visit with our library. I really enjoyed reading The Missing Pages. It was a memorable book with such intriguing and endearing characters. And I also love the elements of spirituality in this book. And I suspect others here today who have read your book or plan on reading it soon will feel the same way. And as I said, we're doing this interview spoiler free to give the audience members who haven't yet read the book or are in the process of reading the book an introduction to the book. So I was wondering if you could just please tell us a little bit what this book is about.
Absolutely. So this novel explores the legend of Harry Elkins Widener, who was a real life figure. He was a 27-year-old book collector who perished on the Titanic. And the legend surrounding him is that he had traveled to London to purchase a very, very rare, precious book. And when he was returning to New York, his parents were with him on the Titanic, and his mother pleaded for him to get on the lifeboat with him. But he told his mother that he had to go back to his cabin to retrieve this rare and precious book, and he was never seen again, and the book was never found. His mother went on to create the Harry Elkins Widener Memorial Library at Harvard for him. There's a special room inside this library to this day that has his original book collection and his desk and chairs. The librarian puts fresh flowers on his desk every week to conjure up the sensation that at any moment his mother might, his spirit might come in and pull one of the books off of the shelves and sit down to read. And so I write in The Missing Pages the story of what I allow Harry to tell in his own words what really happened in those last moments of the Titanic. But I do it from his perspective in the ghost, as a ghost inside the library his mother built in his honor. And there's a dual timeline as well about a young woman named Violet Hutchins who has suffered her own personal grief, and she's employed as a page inside the library. Paige is someone who shepherds the rare books to the reading room for scholars to read. And she starts to suspect that Harry's ghost is trying to communicate to her and beg her to uncover an untold chapter of his story. So that's what the book is about.
Okay, so I was wondering if you could share a little more detail what this book is about beyond the introduction you just shared.
Well, I mean, the book is about grief. It is about maternal love. It is about the healing power of books. It is about legacy and how we can create things in which our not just spiritually our essence lives on, but who we are, the values of who we are lives on. To me, The Missing Pages is a love letter to how books connect us. Because you have two timelines in this novel, you see how this library that was created historically by Harry's mother, Eleanor, even decades later, nearly 100 years later, it becomes a place of healing, a place of learning, a place where not only is his name and his legend still shared to this day. If you were taking a tour at Harvard, you would learn about him, but that it becomes this monument of, I think, a mother's strength, her fortitude, and a way to make sure that her son's um, spirit never dies, literally, in this book.
Mhm. Yes, that is definitely true. I was wondering what was the inspiration for this book?
Okay, so I previously had never heard of Harry Elkins Widener. I mean, I obviously so many of us know about many of the details of the Titanic. A lot of us have seen the movie, but I certainly had never heard about this Gilded Age book collector who perished on the Titanic and, supposedly had just purchased this very, very rare book. So the way I found out about it is that my daughter was doing a summer program. I went to Wellesley College just outside Massachusetts, and my daughter was doing a summer program there right after her junior year in high school. And part of the summer program was that they arranged for children, the students, to have tours of all the different surrounding colleges. So my daughter signed
Mhm.
up for a tour of Harvard. I wasn't with her, but she signed up with the other students. And when I came to pick her up after her summer program ended, she said, when I had this tour of Harvard, the tour guide told us a most amazing story. And, she shared with me this legend that as the tour guide got to the Harry Elkins Widener Memorial Library and he stood at the bottom of the steps, he shared with the children like all the legend surrounding him, and that he did not get on the lifeboat despite his mother's pleas, and that she went on to build this library for him, and that, at the center is this memorial room that I described to you earlier. So my daughter said, "Isn't that an incredible story?" And I said, "It is an incredible story." And right away, I had that sort of emotional response to what she shared. And I think I responded to it so strongly because I instantly could see that scene on the lifeboat from the perspective of not only Harry telling his mother that he was just going back for a book, hopefully just trying to say that to her, giving her the gift of hope that he was going to get the next lifeboat, even though intellectually I kind of suspected he was probably just saying that because he wanted her to get on the lifeboat, and he wanted to be a gentleman and stay behind and let the women and children to board. But I also could see it very clearly from his mother's perspective, desperate to get her son on the lifeboat. This strong emotional response that no matter even if your son is 27, 37, 47, he's still your son, and you desperately want to save him. And so that torque between a mother's desperation and a son's gift of trying to give his mother hope, and the gift of just, trying to make sure that she is safely sent into, onto a lifeboat, really drew me to it because of that emotional response. As the days went on after she shared that story with me, I couldn't shake, you know, not thinking about it. And I started to do this dive to be like, well, could there be any credibility that the fact that he did go back to his book, his cabin for a rare book that was so precious that he would have risked his life for it? And if so, what was that book? And that set me on, I love to do historical research. So that was like the first thing that like I was going into a deep dive to find out what the book was. I discovered that it was a 16th century copy of Francis Bacon's essays that was so small it was the size of a baseball card. I was able to write to Quaritch Limited, which is the bookseller that sold Harry this particular book that still is in existence today, still has the archives leading up to him purchasing the book, with letters from him saying, what he wanted to buy, when he could meet with them. And then subsequently, after the Titanic went down, they had letters from Quaritch, Bernard Quaritch, who was the bookseller he purchased it for, writing to Harry's bookseller in Philadelphia, um, Rosenbach, who, saying, right before he left, he told me this book was so precious to him that he was going to keep it in his the breast pocket of his dinner jacket, so that even if he was shipwrecked, he'd have something to read. So should you, I know Harry's, body had not been found yet. Should you find a body that has a book inside its dinner jacket, it could be used for identification. All these details that I started to, be able to build out the cast of players in this book. Rosenbach in Philadelphia, Quaritch in London, Harry, his parent, who was Eleanor Widener? How did she come to, to marry his father, come into wealth? How did she finance the library? Writing historical fiction, as you can tell, is really sifting through a thousand and one questions and trying to find answers to them, and then creating a book in which you have those questions, but I create a web in which they're answered by the last page.
I love hearing the inspiration for stories and just hearing a different background, how authors get drawn to a story. My next question is, I was fascinated to learn about the research process for historical fiction books. So I was wondering if you could explain a little more about the research you did for this novel. Like I didn't know about Harry Widener either, or about him perishing on the Titanic. So I was just wondering how you undertook the process to do the research.
So writing any historical novel takes a tremendous amount of research. So much research that you probably have no idea that every little, thing that a novelist who's writing historical fiction has to do, from researching Gilded Age etiquette. How did people dress? How did you purchase a ticket on the Titanic? What were the levels of class in the Titanic? Was there a library on the, I mean, I could actually tell you, speak for hours about all the different research that I had to do with this novel. But the first sweeps of research really are about understanding who the Widener family was. How did Harry come to be born into wealth? Who were his parents, his grandparents? How did he become a passionate book collector? Who were the influences in that collecting passion of his? How did he become educated in that? And so that was the first sweep. So to share the high notes of the research, the Widener family was not wealthy until Harry's grandfather, P.A.W. Widener, basically was a self-made man, a complete pinnacle of the great American dream. He was a butcher who sold mutton to the Union troops during the Civil War, made a fortune doing that. Then he invested that money into the burgeoning transportation system of Philadelphia, particularly trolley cars. That with the Elkins family, who you hear Harry Elkins Widener. So Harry's mother, Eleanor, was the daughter of his Harry's grandfather's business partner. And so there was a great dynasty made in increasing the transportation system in Philadelphia through those two families. And then once that wealth was accumulated, they started to diversify into American steel, even into the White Star Line of the Titanic, and other cruise ships. So the wealth just really accelerated in the Gilded Age. His grandfather became an avid collector of art. He had one of the largest Rembrandt collections and Van Dyck collections in the world. If you were go to Washington, D.C. now, you would see at the National Gallery, there is hundreds of paintings that have been donated by the family there. And the family had an enormous sprawling estate called Linwood Hall right outside of Philadelphia. It was nicknamed the house that art built because they had so many rooms to display the art that they had in their collection. There was a Raphael room, there was a Van Dyck room, a Titian room, a Rembrandt gallery. If you were to go to the Freer now and walk through that museum, it would be very much similar to the way Harry grew up. I researched, as I mentioned before, the booksellers who influenced his life, particularly A.S.W. Rosenbach, who was a Jewish bookseller in Philadelphia, who really got Harry his early library started and taught him a lot about book collecting. And then Bernard Quaritch, who I mentioned was in London, where he purchased not only the little, which they call the Little Bacon, the one that he allegedly went back to his cabin to purchase, but he did purchase several other books as well, though they were being sent home to Philadelphia. He was not carrying them with him on board the Titanic. So that's a little bit about the early research, understanding, as I mentioned before, the cast of characters, learning how Harry was educated at Harvard, what Harvard meant to him. He lived in Roosevelt's old suite in Morley Court at Harvard, which was a wonderful detail that I excavated, learning who his roommate was. All of those details, when you read this book, have been fastidiously vetted by me to make sure that I'm sharing with you information that really happened. Obviously, this is my first ghost story. One of the reasons that I wanted to write from the perspective as Harry's ghost is because I wanted the ultimate narrator, the person who really knew the truth, and who better to tell what really happened than Harry himself. And since Eleanor truly, his mother truly believed that she was creating this library to house his, his spirit, that it would live within these marble walls, it seemed really fitting. And as you mentioned in my introduction, that this is a book that also has threads of spirituality in it. And I think for me, it was really wonderful to explore themes of mortality, themes of how the soul still continues after death, and not make it a book, uh, a book about faith necessarily, but a book about how each of our souls is unique to us and how very special that is. And then of course the influence of books on a book lover's soul.
Hmm, I love that. What was it like writing a dual timeline for this book, and how do you decide to approach writing the two timelines, and why did you approach it this way?
Hmm. So I wanted to do a dual timeline with this novel. Well, first of all, because I knew that there was going to be some, something revealed at the end, the answer to this question of whether Harry did in fact go back for this book or did he go back for someone else? And, was it a combination of both? And so I knew there was going to be a reveal. And I also really love this idea to explore how in modern day, as I mentioned before, how the library continues to be a monument of healing for people, decades later. And so creating the character of Violet Hutchins, this young woman who has lost her boy, I don't think it's a spoiler to you learn
Diamond.
early on that she's lost her boyfriend in a very tragic accident and finds herself employed in a library. She's always been an avid book lover, and how that space that
No.
Harry's mother created to help heal her own grief continues to help others even in 1992. And I chose 1992 because I was in the Boston area during that time going to school, and I would frequent Harvard Square all the time. So when you read Violet and you see her getting a chocolate croissant at Au Bon Pain in Harvard Square, or going to Harvard Bookstore downstairs where the, used books are in the poetry section with her boyfriend, that's all based on me.
Oh, I love that. That's great. Um, so there were several memorable characters through the two timelines. How was it writing about Harry Widener, a character who was based on a real life person, versus the other two main characters who were totally fictional?
That's a good question, Michelle. So when
Thank you.
you're writing about a true life person, there are certain building blocks of their character that you can't ignore, once you research them. And so there's a immediate armature of how you're going to, describe them to your readers. For example, even just simply looking at a photograph of Harry Widener. I wasn't going to say the man had blonde hair when there's a picture of him and he has dark hair and dark eyes. So those clues are kind of fed to me very easily that I can incorporate them. But I also love being able to create characters from my imagination. And where does my imagination um, have a stepping stone to create different characters is sort of interesting. So I create a fictional character of Ada Lippenhold, who is the love interest for Harry. She's a female bookseller who works at Quaritch. He starts corresponding with her when he's interested in purchasing books on his upcoming trip to London prior to boarding the Titanic to return home. I was inspired to create a fictional character like Ada after reading that Bernard Quaritch had a sister who worked in his bookstore. And then upon his death, his sister actually took over the bookstore. So that made me feel that I could create a credible character who was someone who I could show that Harry and she shared the same love language, which was books, but that it was grounded in fact, that at Quaritch there was in fact a female bookseller. So it's like always a mix. I never like to create a fictitious character that's so off the rails, you'd be like, that would never happen. If you ask me about any of my imagined characters, I'm always going to be able to tell you a story of how I came to create them. What were those little footnotes that helped me feel confident that they could have actually existed, even though they are imagined? So that was a real joy to create Ada. She's like the ultimate book heroine, I think, because she loves books. She's independent. She's kind of a unicorn in the Gilded Age society, working, earning her own money, collecting on the side, knows her own mind, doesn't want to be a trophy wife. She interacts with a lot of really interesting people, and you'll see Belle DaCosta Green appear in the book if you've read the personal librarian. It's always fun to see characters, historical figures that you've already learned about. And then, Violet is an imagined character, but she has a purpose because, as I mentioned before, she's someone who is a modern day book lover, someone who learns the love of reading through her grandmother, who feels at home in a library during a very dark time in her life. As I mentioned before, it's a place of healing. So they're imagined, but they come from, a foundation that I think makes sense to the reader.
Okay, who is your favorite character to write and who is the most challenging?
Ooh. Hmm.
Hmm.
Well, Harry was definitely my most favorite to write. And I think one of the reasons why is I absolutely loved writing in the voice of a ghost. It's the ultimate omniscient narrator. Harry can talk about the past, but he's also very anchored in the present. He moves fluidly between rooms. One of my most favorite scenes with Harry is actually when you see him mourning, his mother mourning him, and he's desperate to show his mother a sign that he's actually still there with her, and he conjures up all these birds, different types of birds to appear outside his window. And it's such a miraculous event. She sort of realizes that this could not have happened unless there had been someone who was, in heaven orchestrating it. So he's a very soulful voice. And as I kind of loosely said before, for me, it enabled me to open up a chamber of my own heart that is about love and loss um, and soulfulness and mortality and grief and family and all those things. And that goes into that voice. So he's definitely was the most fun and liberating to write about. The most challenging character, um, hmm. Challenging character. I guess, the roommates, Violet has these two vicious roommates that aren't very nice to her. And they basically create this sort of tension in the novel where you almost think that some people are starting to think that she's starting to lose her mind when she suspects that she starts thinking that Harry's ghost is trying to set her on this sort of hunt to find something that has been buried for nearly a century. So I guess they were difficult to write. Dual timelines for me, I don't ever write an outline. I have like I know what inspired me to want to write the book, and I start creating the voices and the character, and I know where I want to end. But how I get there is always sort of a mystery to me myself.
Mhm. Okay, what were your views, connection to spirituality, especially relating to ghosts, before writing this book, and can you share experiences during writing the book?
Hmm. So I can't say that I've ever seen a ghost, but I do personally feel that um, there's an energy about when we've lost people that I do feel that I am open to that energy surrounding me. And I don't feel that once we die that we just cease to exist. So that's my personal belief. I feel that I have always had a very thin veil that sort of separates me from um, you know, people who want to share their stories with me, that I connect with them very easily and that I'm open to hearing stories. And I would like to feel that that thinness of veil also makes me feel very sensitive to different energy around me. Um, I did feel that I needed to do my due diligence writing this book and to speak with someone who does believe in ghosts and how a ghost might communicate from the other side. And so I actually made an appointment to meet with a medium just to have sort of an intellectual conversation with him on how there might be different signs that Harry might, you know, emerge from. So, for example, it was the medium who said that often when a spirit is in a room, that the temperature might change, that you might feel a coldness around you, or you might smell a fragrance that doesn't belong there. So those scenes where um, Violet thinks that she smells tobacco smoke in a library, and you wouldn't want to smell that, Michelle, in your library, any type of
No.
smoking, but it sort of gets her attention, or a book falling off the ground, and what is the book that falls off the ground, those type of things. That all came from me meeting with a medium. And strangely, that when I made this appointment, even though I really just went to sort of have an intellectual conversation with him, the medium told me that Harry Elkins-Weiner was actually at one point in the room with us and asked me if I had any questions for Harry. So I did have a question because there was something that I knew plot-wise that had to happen towards the end of the book, but I didn't know how I was going to have that revealed. And so I explained the plot, and the medium said that Harry had sort of a good laugh about this. And he suggested something that would be on his desk. And I used it in the book because it was a great answer. So I, to this day, don't know if it was really the voice of Harry or not, but whoever it was from the other side, I definitely decided to use it.
Oh yeah, I did hear that story when I met you. That was so fascinating. I found it also intriguing the references and imagery to birds, especially, the story of the starling and everything, among others. Why did you provide these references?
So, when my son was a year old on his first birthday, I went to wake him, and my mother-in-law had passed away just about a year before I got married. So my children certainly had never had a chance to meet her. And when I went to wake my son up on his birthday, I noticed on his windowsill there was this beautiful bird. It was, no, the way normally little brown sparrows are sort of heathered brown. This one had a whole white belly, a breast. It was very, very, very unusual. And it was on the windowsill, and it was looking at him. And I just, at first I thought I just thought it was a pretty bird. And I said, "Oh, look at the bird, Zachary. It's your birthday. It's your birthday bird." But the bird didn't leave. And then I said to him, "Come look at the bird." And we went up to, and we were looking at the bird, and the bird was looking at us. And I have to tell you, Michelle, it probably was like 3 minutes at least that we were looking at this bird without it moving. And I said to him, "I think this is like your grandma Zelda who's just coming to say hello on your birthday," because it was looking at him so intently and not moving, even as our faces were sort of close to the pane. So I've always had this fascination with birds and feeling that birds are a sign from the other side. And birds, you will read in this book, there's a lot of bird imagery where Harry uses them to let those who he knows that he loves know that he's there.
Yeah, it just was very fascinating. Can you share a little, like actually, let me go let me go to the next question. Our audience, I love to hear book recommendations. Can you please share some books you read recently that you can recommend?
So I just finished The Artist and the Feast by Lucy Steeds. That's an absolutely beautiful book that I read and I loved. The language is absolutely beautiful, and it was like a forerunner for the Barnes and Noble Discovery Prize. So if you like literary fiction, that's a wonderful book to read. And I am reading a lot of Edith Wharton now because I'm working on a book about Edith Wharton and her
Hmm.
time in Paris during World War One. So, Age of Innocence, The House of Mirth, those are all books that I've recently finished that I love, and I think they're really worthy of going back to and reading if you haven't read them or reading them a second time. But that's what I'm reading. It's always hard for me to say a lot of books because when I'm working on a novel, I'm always reading things that surround that particular book.
Good point. Well, that kind of goes into the next question of what you're writing next. Mhm.
So Edith Wharton, many people do not know this, but during World War One, she created um, like hostels for Belgian refugee children who were orphaned during the war. And she had lace schools in these particular hostels to teach them how to make lace. The lace was used to create lingerie that was sold back to New York and funded her whole charities. And so I'm working on a book about a child who was one of these children who was orphaned during the war, who ends up in one of Edith's hostels.
Wow, that's really intriguing. I can't wait to read it and hear more about that. Okay, at this point, I was gonna open up to our audience if anyone has any questions. And as I said, you can use that little icon, the raised hand, or put it in chat. And I do see that Maria has a question, so you can get started.
Hi,
Hi, Maria.
Alyson. I met you once with Alyson Pataki, maybe 2, 3 years ago. I don't remember, maybe 2 years.
Oh,
Um,
wonderful.
I'm sorry I didn't get to come see you. I think you were the next chapter,
Mhm.
but I definitely love this book. The cover is so beautiful. Her
Cover is really
dress
pretty.
pages.
My
Yes,
favorite.
for a while notes. Uh, but I don't. I have so many questions, but I'll probably ruin the end. With the Ouija board, have you ever had a Ouija board, or
Yes,
have
as
you
a
played
child.
with one?
I'm a child of the 70s. I was born in
Um,
1952. So for every sleepover, we always used a Ouija board.
um,
So it was fun to sort of play with that in the book.
I've never. I
Oh,
was always afraid that something would happen because I had when I worked at Ohika Castle, I
oh,
did the overnight shift, and I did see a ghost when I was going back
Mhm.
from the bathroom. As a little boy, there used to be a military school.
oh, wow.
Yeah, and there are
Oh,
ghosts
okay.
there.
Mhm.
And
Interesting.
I've been to a medium and twice, and my mom. They say that you have to wait a year till after the person passes,
Through.
but yeah, which I did, and I do feel that there are always, you
Mm,
know. So when I read that about the scent,
mhm,
the tobacco, the birds, the sterling,
mm.
it's all so beautiful. And was this always the cover?
No. So the original cover that was shown to me looked very different and did not conjure up the book for me properly. It was a woman, a modern looking woman in a white dress, and the pages of the dress was made of pages, but it was a green background, a very tan, muscular woman in a white dress that looked like it was from Banana Republic, and then some white pages out of her dress. And so I love this idea of a dress made of pages, but it wasn't the right figure. And so this is a John Singer Sargent painting of Nancy Astor that they were able to use, and
Oh, that's
so it's a Gilded Age woman. I mean, and a Gilded Age painting, and I think it's truly one of my favorite covers in my whole career. I just think it's so beautiful. Like I love it.
That is
uh,
really beautiful.
I like the Rubio, the jeweled book. Was that
Mm.
actually on the ship?
Yes, it was. It really
It
was.
was.
And there is some sort of lore that he was asked to chaperone it through customs. It had just been bought by in auction by someone in New York, the person I mentioned. So that is true. And some people believe that's the book that he went back to, but most scholars don't. I mean, everything I've read believe it's The Little Bacon, but he was asked to also chaperone that book.
Oh, okay. I'm not going to give you the
You can
ending.
you can go online and you can research Sangorsky and his jeweled bindings, and you'll see the type of books that he was creating that were really decadent for that time period.
I did go online. I looked up Sudden Light, the poem by Dante Gabriel Rossetti, and
Mm,
that's a beautiful poem. I
mm,
love that.
it
I
is
just read
beautiful.
it. And and Lizzie Sedel,
Mhm.
um, when he zoomed, I go rabbit holes. So I did a lot of research. I'm not going to be a writer because I hate writing, but I love reading. But I looked at the the scene about his wife and
Mhm.
everything, the red hair, the photo. It's amazing. I like that the fact. Okay, I'm not gonna say.
Oh,
I'm
you
not,
did.
hard
I
for me
don't
to
want to
say the
spoil it.
ending. I don't want. Yeah,
Okay. Well,
everything.
Did you go
Sure.
online and also look at Frederick Layton's house so that you could see the blue tiles and everything I described when they go to the Layton house? That's all.
I will.
You can go to London today and see Frederick Layton's house.
Going to London.
Okay. You should go and
Um,
see it. You'll love it.
I have to the Leighton House in London. I have
Yes.
to write that down.
Yes.
Um, thank you so much, and I will be seeing you for your next book. I
Okay.
promise. And
Okay.
I'll have the missing pages, and you can sign it for me.
Oh,
Um,
wonderful.
thank you,
Um,
Allison, for writing such lovely books. I love them. I
oh,
read your other one. Okay, I let somebody else go. Thank you again.
Uh, does
Anybody else
anyone
have a
else have a
question?
question?
Oh,
Anyone else?
I can talk to
Oh, if not, I can go back and ask the question I was going to ask before. I just wanted to save some time in case, we had more questions. But um, so I was wondering if you could share a little more about your journey to becoming an author and the path that took you to be the author you are today.
So, I have been writing for 25 years, a little bit over 25 years. I had my first novel published in 2000 when I was in my 20s. So I started dreaming of being a novelist my senior year in college. As you mentioned, I was an art history and Japanese studies double major. I spent my first year after college as a apprentice as a Japanese to a Japanese no mask carver. And so I carved a single Japanese mask out of a block of cypress wood for the Japanese No theater, which is like a very ancient form of theater over there. And I had this idea to write a novel about a Japanese carver who dreams of painting with the Impressionists during the turn of the last century. And I was able to work on that novel and get it published. And every book since always begins with a question that I don't know the answer to that I'm really interested in pursuing. I love to bring my artistic lens to writing to create a language that my readers can see everything, feel the texture of everything that's very sensory rich so that you're entering a world which you can really see very clearly. I love that. It's like painting for words for me. And I absolutely love being a writer because every book that I write, I learn something new. I have the challenge of trying to share that knowledge with you and create a narrative that, doesn't feel like you're reading a history book, that you love the characters and you're learning through osmosis. Um, every book I think I'm never going to finish and it's going to be an ultimate failure. I'm lucky I have the support of a wonderful husband who tells me, you said this with the last book and the book before that, and you're going to finish it and it's going to be okay. But I always think like I'm a catastrophist. Like this is never going to work out. I'm never going to publish another book again. So it's always fraught, but there's a lot of joy at the end when the book comes out and you see the smiling faces of your readers and you hear wonderful words of, people who loved your characters and learned something that they didn't know. So it's all, that's the journey. But, the hardship is really during the process of it and thinking you have all these things that you somehow have to sew together and you really, the ending, but how are you going to get there? And, are people even buying books anymore? Are they just watching television or on their phone? You can get very, down in your isolation. But then this part of it is really lovely. And, like you, Michelle, like I know your face, I know your name now because you've been so
Yeah.
supportive showing up at my
Thank you.
book signings. As soon as you wrote, I knew exactly who you were. I could picture your
Oh, that's great. Thank
face.
you.
And that's a really wonderful thing to know your people and to feel that, they're coming along on this journey with you to learn with every book. So I hope I can keep going. So I appreciate your support.
Oh, and thank you, of course. I really do appreciate it. Maria, you said you had another question as well. Mhm.
I question Hazel Gaynor. Have you read her book, The Girl Who Came Home?
I have not. I have not.
Oh, it's about the Titanic. It's a true, it's a historical fiction. It was my first book by her. I think you would really enjoy it because you will love it. All her
I,
books are great.
I always hesitate to read other historical novels about what I'm writing about when I'm writing it because you don't want to,
Well, yeah, because they'll be like me. Yeah,
but now I think
and
would be a wonderful
yeah,
opportunity
you're
to,
over. You finished
yeah,
writing it. Yeah,
yeah,
now you can enjoy, and you won't get.
yes, yeah.
Uh, the quote, the memory is only the power we have to reconnect with those we've lost. One of your quotes that you
Mhm.
wrote, that is so true. But
True, right?
that's the only way we connect with
Yeah,
the.
and we should be so grateful we have memories and making those
Yeah.
memories because they do sustain us. Yes.
Um, Thank you. That's it.
Okay,
This is Jill, AILL.
okay. Yes, hello.
The- Hi, Allison. I don't know if you remember me. All I'll say is Japanese, those figurines I gave you.
Oh, of course. So nice to see you, Jill. Yes, my beautiful
Oh,
doll collection that you shared with me. And I still have them in the basket too that you gave them to me. And so thank
and that's old. That's, quite old. 1947. They got them. But anyway, your characters have such emotion. Like I felt like the mother.
you.
You really do a great job, no matter who you're talking about. I can feel their emotion,
Oh,
good or bad.
oh.
But also, I think there's a new book out of Edith Wharton, her short stories. For some reason, I was looking for it, but I can't find it in Publishers Weekly. It just came out like a week, maybe tomorrow it's coming.
We'll
But
have to take a look at that. Okay. I
stories.
appreciate you telling me that. As soon as I get off, I'll see what that is and get it right away.
And also, I know you're an artist because I remember the story about your mom when you brought home a picture.
Yes.
It's the cutest, nicest story.
Oh.
Because my daughter, when she was in school, she drew in second grade what she thought was a Lincoln log cabin, and our teacher ripped it up. That's how she perceived it, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, just so you know, I just recently found out, knowing that you're an artist also, the Frick Museum, the front, there's that woman on the top, that woman posed kind of naked. She's sculptures. Her name is Audrey Munson.
Right.
That's my relative. I just found out.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Interesting. Fiona Davis has a book about her.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
She
about
died
that.
in a sanitarium. I mean, she died penniless. She had such a very sad life.
Oh,
Audrey.
yeah, but there's a lot more to her story.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, there's a murder. Yeah.
Oh,
She had,
wow.
boyfriend, I was going to write to Fiona and see if she'd want to do it because I know with the Frick Museum, I knew she did a book. But even the man that's in charge, that goes around from Farmingdale, he talks about museums. He loves the Frick Museum. And I asked him, and he goes, I don't know who it is. And she's in different pictures, sculptures in different museums in New York.
Yeah, she's
Who
all
knew?
over.
I didn't know till my oldest cousin died July 16th. And we found papers that were related. And her father, but it's an interesting story. But I didn't know if, I was going to contact Fiona Davis and see, because there's more to the story. I don't want to go into it, but there's mystery, there's death, there's a sexual, it's very interesting. And then she died at 104, and it's quite a story for someone to tell, not me, because it takes a lot of research.
Right.
But I think it's upstate in some place, Western New York. There's a big article about women who you don't know about, Audrey Munson, and that's me. My name is. Yeah, I would have never known, but my cousin died, my oldest cousin. So anyway, enough. But thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. So I'm so glad to have you. And just so you know,
five of them.
Yes, just sorry to interrupt, but just so you know, Fiona Davis and Anne, I think it's Anne Leary, are going to be on a historical fiction panel in the spring at Delphi College.
Oh.
Alice Hoffman, the author, has a special book festival that she does at Adelphi every spring. And so we're on the historical fiction panel. So maybe try that and then you can see.
Oh, I know.
Fantastic.
Should I write to her?
I think it's either April 16th or 17th. They have those 2 days reserved for it. I don't know which day. I think I'm going to speak on the Thursday, but it's not 100%, but like just those 2 days, there will be the festival. And that's it at
Oh,
Adele.
Very
Okay.
interesting.
I
Okay.
will,
oh, thanks.
you don't see my
Why don't you
picture.
share the story? Why don't you share that quick story about your mother with your artwork?
I tell the story. So when I speak to a larger group, I often tell the story about how my mother, when I was in kindergarten, I came home with what I thought was a beautiful painting, and my mother didn't really acknowledge it very much. And my mother, I said, "Isn't it good? Isn't it good?" And my mother, or "Isn't it great?" I think I said. And my mother said, "A painting is only great if it's interesting from every direction." And she took what I did and I had done like a tree with an airplane and this whole sort of descriptive thing. And she then turned it and said, "Well, what happens when you switch here? What happens to the space around it? And does your eye carry around it?" And she turned it again, and then she turned it again. And she told me how something that is interesting has to have multiple perspectives and always be interesting no matter which way you turned. And that when I'm writing, I always hear my mother in my head saying that, when we'd go to see a piece of sculpture, to walk around the sculpture, to see how something new was revealed from every side, even from the bottom, to look at paintings up close and then far away and from the side. And so when I'm writing, that spherical way of shifting and changing perspective is something that I love to do. And that comes from my mom and that insight.
I love the story.
I love that
It's
you
really
still
story.
remember that all these years later, because I know I've seen you at the library so many times and you did give me that beautiful gift. So thank you.
But that in Huntington, all over, wherever you are, Plainview, Old Bethpage, wherever, and the book, the Long Island book reads. But yeah, I just love that story, and I can see it in your books.
Oh.
I can see that reflection from that simple statement.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Oh.
Thank you
Well,
for
thanks for
inviting me to share that story. That's wonderful.
This is Debbie Cotton. If
That
I'm
was a
not
good
showing,
story.
I'm not showing myself because as I put
That's
in the
fine.
chat, I was sick for the whole last week and I haven't washed my hair.
Oh,
But
That's Mhm.
But I work at the Belmore Library, and we had you during the pandemic on an all virtual author visit we did with a couple of the other libraries. So I don't have a question. I just wanted to thank you so much for
Oh.
speaking again. You were such a generous soul, and the things you said tonight capped off by the story about your mother, which is it's a wonderful story, and you
Oh.
took it in the best possible way as a child. But it's also everything you say about the writing process, it
Yep.
nourishes me in terms of like running with a book group that I'm run, or if the one that a couple of personal ones that I'm in,
Mm.
that just those kinds of things that you're saying when you when you go back as a reader, also then inform the reading in such a more rich way. So thank you for that.
Oh, my
Yeah.
pleasure. And thank you for
I'm
joining us tonight. Mhm.
one of the members for Belmore, and I bought five of your books to hand out to 3 people at the Belmore Library who I know would love this story.
Yay.
Thank
You weren't, that day you weren't there
you.
because I was to recommend it, but it just recently came out. But I bought 5 of them.
Oh, you're
I gave
so
one
kind.
to Berta, Lita.
Sounds like one for our group.
Well, thank you. It's very touching to me just to be able to know that so many people joined us tonight that have heard me speak before, who don't find me repetitive and enlightening and
Not at all.
are willing to sort of, dial it and hear me. And I do really appreciate my Long Island readers, and you've supported me almost from the very beginning of my career with the Long Island Reads nomination. That was just so special to me. And it's just wonderful. And now, Alice Hoffman, I think, was the author who followed me after Lost Wife. I think Dove Keepers was another Long Island Read selection. So it's lovely now also this camaraderie that exists between authors who've had that wonderful award, and how you bring our books to more Long Island patrons to get, so it's just in a world now that often seems very dark and fraught. This is a really lovely silver lining.
Oh,
Amen.
it's lovely.
Just
Maria,
have one question. The Alice Hoffman in April, that'll be posted on your website?
It will be. I can definitively tell you that that April 16th and 17th is the day of the festival because they just reached out to Fiona and me and Anne and confirmed our availability for the historical fiction. I just don't know which day we're going to speak, but I do believe it's going to be this. Fiona said she preferred the 16th, so you can put that on your calendar and think that, most likely it'll be on the 16th there.
Just went to see the play Art yesterday. You just mentioned with uh, awesome play. It ends on the 21st of December. I don't know if you're able to go see it, but it's about a white canvas, a painting that he pays $300,000 for a white painting.
Oh, wow. That sounds like an
His
interesting.
friend. Yeah, it was very funny. All three of them are awesome. So I don't know if you'll get to see it before then, but there was only 2 more weeks, I think, performances. But it's because you mentioned art and turning it all sideways is just a white canvas, and
Oh,
they paid so much money for that. And
that sounds like it's an interesting show.
it was. Thank you again. Sorry.
Okay, so I'm gonna finish up at this time. So thank you again, Alyson. Thank you, everybody. Everybody who asked some great questions, great comments. I just wanted to say, Alyson, like if anyone wanted to keep in touch with you and find out what you're up to next, what would be the best way to do that?
You should definitely follow me on Instagram. It's just my name at Alyson Richman. There's like a fake one out there that has my author photograph. Don't follow that one, but the one that has more followers. So the one that has the most followers. And then I do have a website that I try and update all of my things, but it's not so great. Things are always emerging and I forget to tell the webmaster to update them. I also am on Facebook under Alyson Richman author. But Instagram is going to definitely be the best way. But I do have also a message thing on my website that if you want to send me a message or ask me something, I always try and respond.
Okay, and I just want to say,
Is the website alysonrichman.org?
Yeah, alysonrichman.com. And I have an unusual spelling, ALYSONRICHMAN.com. And yeah, and if in the contact form, if you wanted to ask me a question, you can always send that. I pride myself in getting back to everybody. I might not do it within 24 hours, but within a week, I will get back to you.
As an aside, it's Jill again. Can I ask how, I can't imagine how old your children are, but I saw them when they were, what, 8 and 10? They were young. You were there.
Yeah, I used to always bring my children to the library events because I couldn't get a babysitter or I didn't want to spend the money for a babysitter.
And your dad would come.
Yeah, so I always brought them, and I do think it kind of rubbed off on them in a good way. So my daughter is a sophomore at MIT. She wants to be a doctor.
Oh.
She's in college, and my son is just graduated college from Carleton College. Oh, yes, thank you.
that's such a
Yes, my son is huge now. He's 6'5".
yeah.
Jill, I'm very tall myself, but look how small
I know. You look like a ballerina. I was going to say to people, you would think she's a ballerina. You always have, and that beautiful hair. But I just remember them being like 6 and 8. They were little, they were young, and your father was there just keeping tabs on them.
Drive me because I've never driven on a highway. That's still true. My dad is still
right.
Well. And so my son is starting work in the new year in finance, and my daughter hopefully will be Dr. Charlotte one day.
Could you that she was the valedictorian, right?
Valedictorian at Huntington. She was. I can't do any math or science, but she's really good at everything. So
you were so proud of her and your husband. I don't blame you and your husband. Yeah,
we're very proud of her. Yes, she's a special girl. She really is. And she gave me the idea for the book, The Missing Pages.
Yeah, that's true.
I dedicated the book to her. Like if you get it, you'll see it says for Charlotte. So
do you recommend that people read your author's note first?
You know what? I think it's a good idea because then
I think so.
People always tell me they wish that they had, because then they realize how much research and who's real and where they came from. So it's not a bad idea. I mean, you don't spoil a book. I don't give it away any plot spoilers in the authors. Just basically say where the inspiration came and, what's true and who helped me. So it is a good idea, I think.
Yeah.
I just wanted to share. Oh, there are a few people that put comments in the chat, Karen and Marilyn, just thanking you for being here, and they love your books. Also, Debbie said thank you, and Susie. So, just wanted to include that.
Mhm.
And oh, and just to mention that, so again, they will all enjoy talking to you and everything. Also, Kathy as well,
Mhm.
sharing also what books she enjoyed. I just want to share our next virtual author visit. So it's in 2 months from now. It's in February 9th with debut author Aaron Crosby Eckstein, who wrote Junie. And you can register for that on the website. I'll let you know when that's available. And good night to everyone. And good night to Allison, all of our attendees. And thank you again for attending. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you again, Allison. It's great
Thank you
talking to
so
you
much.
again.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
everyone.
Thanks
Happy
again.
holidays.
Happy
Bye.
holidays, everybody. Thank you.